So let's think about these big, sprawling narratives we build together around the tabletop. When you strip away the dice rolls, the monster stats, the gold pieces, what really sticks with you? What makes those stories unforgettable? I often think it's the people, well, the non-player characters.
Yeah.
Isn't it often about how we connect or maybe even clash with them? Could that be like the real heart of a memorable D&D story?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny how sometimes the smallest interaction can just ripple outwards and change everything. I actually had this happen recently in a game I was running. The party, right? They met this tinker, a gnome named Gibbet, total gadget guy. But they were super focused on this big dragon threat, very high stakes.
Okay.
So they kind of saw Gibbet as, maybe a source for a couple of cheap potions, not a major player. They haggled a bit, grabbed some minor stuff, and just moved on, didn't give him much thought.
Right. Typical adventurers, mission first.
Exactly. But later, things got really grim. Dragon's power growing, party low on resources. And it turns out, because they'd made some throwaway comment earlier about needing siege weapons, which they never followed up on, Gibbet had actually started building one.
No way.
Yeah, he thought he was helping their cause. So in their absolute darkest moment, Gibbet shows up with this, ramshackle but surprisingly effective ballista he'd cobbled together. It totally changed the final fight, more than any magic sword could have. It just hammered home how these NTC connections, even the ones you barely notice, can have these huge, unexpected payoffs.
That's a perfect example, really. It shows the kind of depth we can get when NPCs aren't just quest dispensers or shop fronts. And that's what we're diving into today, these advanced NPC loyalty systems. We want to explore how they work and maybe why they're so important for making D&D feel richer, more real, and ultimately more memorable. We're basing this discussion on a really interesting article from LitRPG Reads that digs into the nuts and bolts.
Right. So fundamentally, what is an NPC loyalty system? Well, think of it as a kind of running tab, a relational ledger. It tracks how key NPCs or even whole factions feel about the player characters over time.
And it's different from just, say, a general reputation score for the whole party in a town.
Exactly. It's much more personal. It's based on direct experiences, specific interactions the players have had with that individual NPC. It's not just the town likes you, it's Guard Captain Valerius trusts you because you saved his patrol.
That makes sense. It adds a strategic element, too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Players actually have to think about who they want to build relationships with, whose side they want to be on, and maybe who they can afford to annoy.
Absolutely. And it becomes especially powerful in campaigns where you have recurring NPCs, people who stick around. A loyalty system turns them from, background elements into active participants in the story, people whose actions are genuinely influenced by their history with the players.
Okay, so that's the concept. But how do you actually make it work at the table? What are the core mechanics we're talking about here?
Well, a pretty common approach, and one that gives you a solid structure, is using points. Some kind of numerical scale. Maybe it's -10 to +10 or 0 to 100, something like that. It just quantifies how loyal or hostile an NPC feels.
A loyalty score, basically.
Right. And the crucial part is that significant player actions, things that really help or hinder that NPC, cause that score to shift measurably.
So saving their life bumps the score up, betraying their trust sends it crashing down. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But the numbers themselves aren't the end goal, are they? How do those scores actually affect what happens in the game?
They're really guidelines for the DM. They signal how an NPC's behavior might change. You can set key thresholds, like if the score drops below a certain point, maybe a neutral NPC becomes actively hostile, starts spreading rumors, maybe tries to sabotage the party.
And on the flip side,
A really high score might mean they offer rare resources, share vital secrets, maybe even put themselves at risk to help the party out.
that creates a real feeling of cause and effect. Your interactions actually matter long term, beyond just a single dice roll.
Precisely. And it's key to remember this isn't static. Loyalty isn't set in stone. It can fade over time if the players neglect the relationship, if they stop putting in the effort, or a major betrayal can cause a huge sudden drop, wiping out lots of goodwill.
So it needs tending, like a real relationship.
Kind of, yeah. Even small things can influence it subtly over time, showing respect, helping them with personal goals during downtime, that sort of thing. It gives both the DM and the players these narrative levers to pull.
That LitRPG Reads article you mentioned, did it have examples of this?
It did, yeah. It had a useful table, like loyalty score ranges. It mapped out different score levels like open hostility, cautious ally, trusted friend, unwavering loyalty, and gave examples of typical NTC behavior for each range. Also, what kinds of actions might trigger shifts between levels and what the impact on the players might be. That kind of thing is super helpful for a DM trying to run this consistently.
That sounds like a great tool for visualizing it. Okay, so let's get into the specifics. How do players actually earn this loyalty? Or lose it? Because it can't be the same for everyone, right? A knight and a goblin probably value different things.
That's absolutely critical. Earning loyalty isn't just about doing generic good deeds. It has to be something meaningful to that specific NPC. Rescuing someone might impress a noble paladin, sure. But maybe a pragmatic rogue is more impressed if you help them pull off a clever heist, you know?
So understanding NPC motivations, their values, their background, that becomes really important. What one person sees as heroic, another might see as foolish or even insulting.
Exactly. And losing loyalty isn't always about, like, grand dramatic betrayals either. Sometimes it's smaller things. Constantly ignoring someone's advice, disrespecting their deeply held beliefs, breaking promises. That stuff erodes trust over time.
The article probably listed examples of both earning and losing actions.
Yeah, it covered a good range. Earning loyalty could be anything from rescuing their family to honoring a difficult bargain, sharing treasure when it's not expected, defending their reputation publicly, or even just showing genuine compassion when they're vulnerable.
Losing it.
Things like insulting their faith or family, ignoring their pleas for help when you could have acted, exposing them to unnecessary risk, betraying a confidence, obviously, siding with their enemies, mocking their sacrifices. The list goes on. The core idea is the action's impact depends entirely on the NPC's individual perspective.
And consistency is key here, I imagine. The NPC's reactions need to feel true to their character.
Definitely. The article stresses that. Reactions should be believable. And also earning that really deep, unwavering loyalty, that should probably get harder over time. True trust isn't built overnight. It requires sustained effort and proof.
Right. A history of positive actions should maybe cushion minor mistakes, but a big betrayal should still hurt badly no matter how much they liked you before.
Exactly. It makes the whole system feel more grounded, more believable.
Okay, so we have this system, we're tracking scores, NPCs are reacting consistently. How does this actually change the game as it's being played? What are the tangible effects beyond just this NPC likes you more now?
Well, the scores should drive concrete gameplay events. Think about it. A loyal blacksmith might give you a discount, or even craft a custom piece of gear. A friendly guard might look the other way occasionally, or give you a heads up about patrols.
Or maybe an ally shows up unexpectedly in a tough fight.
Absolutely. Allies arriving with backup, a grateful wizard sharing a rare spell, a connected noble providing letters of passage. These are great examples. But it works the other way, too. Low loyalty could mean blocked access to resources, active sabotage, maybe someone spreading nasty rumors that hurt your standing elsewhere.
It really weaves those relationships into the fabric of the adventure, making them relevant beyond just social encounters.
For sure. It can unlock side quests, grant access to hidden locations, provide crucial intel, influence diplomatic situations. The possibilities are huge. The article had a whole list of potential gameplay effects, really showing the breadth of how loyalty can shape the narrative.
But it's important to say, this system is a tool, right? It shouldn't completely replace role-playing. Players should still be able to try and persuade, negotiate, apologize.
Oh, 100%. The scores provide a baseline, a context based on past actions, but good role-playing, a heartfelt plea, a genuinely selfless act. Those should always have the potential to sway an NPC's opinion, maybe even overriding the numbers in specific moments. The system supports the role-playing, it doesn't replace it.
Good point. Now, you mentioned earlier that this isn't just about individuals. The article talked about applying this to factions, too, like guilds or noble houses.
That's right. You can absolutely extend this concept to track the party's relationship with larger groups. Thieves' guilds, religious orders, mercenary companies. It adds another layer of complexity and, frankly, realism to the world.
How does that work mechanically? Is it different from tracking individuals?
There are a few ways you could handle it. You might focus loyalty tracking on the faction's key leader or leaders, assuming their opinion heavily influences the group. Or you could track a sort of collective faction score that shifts based on actions affecting the group as a whole or its prominent members.
Which approach is better?
It really depends on the faction. Is it hierarchical with a strong leader, or more decentralized? A DM needs to decide what makes sense for that specific group. The article suggests tailoring the method to the faction's structure.
And factions aren't always unified, are they? You could have allies and enemies within the same organization.
Exactly. That's a great way to add nuance. Maybe the party has earned the trust of the guildmaster, but a rival lieutenant within the guild actively dislikes them and works against them. That creates really interesting internal politics for the players to navigate. The article even had a table for faction loyalty, giving examples like thieves' guilds or religious orders, and what kinds of benefits high loyalty might unlock.
So dealing with factions becomes this intricate dance of navigating different relationships and potential internal conflicts. Okay, let's talk about those benefits. What kind of perks do players actually get for investing time and effort into building high loyalty?
The best perks are usually things that are valuable and relevant to that specific NPC or faction. It's not just about generic +1 bonuses. Think discounted prices from a merchant you've consistently helped, backup from the city watch you've earned respect from, maybe access to a secret library guarded by a mage you befriended.
So rewards that feel earned and connected to the relationship itself.
Precisely. It could be anything from safe lodging to warnings about danger, shared spell knowledge, unique crafting recipes, political influence, invitations to exclusive events, even access to special mounts or adoption into a clan in really high-trust situations.
The article probably emphasized keeping these benefits meaningful, but not, like, game-breaking.
Yes, exactly. The primary goal is to deepen the connection and the story. The perks should feel significant and rewarding, reinforcing the value of the relationship, but maybe not completely trivialize other challenges in the game. They open doors, narratively, and sometimes mechanically.
This sounds like a really powerful tool for DMs. But it also sounds like potentially a lot to keep track of, especially with multiple NPCs and factions. Any advice for the DMs listening on how to actually manage all this information?
Yeah, organization is definitely crucial. You can't just wing it with dozens of shifting scores. The article recommended several approaches. You could use simple index cards for each key NPC, or maybe a spreadsheet. Some people like dedicated notebooks.
What about digital tools?
Absolutely. There are fantastic digital tools now, campaign managers like World Anvil or Notion, even features within some virtual tabletops. Sticky notes on a character sheet, timeline journals, relationship web diagrams, even voice memos after a session to capture key interactions. The key is finding a system that works for you and sticking to it.
Consistency again.
Right.
Right.
Update the scores regularly, especially after important events. And make sure the players see the consequences, good or bad. When loyalty shifts feel logical and earned, it really boosts immersion and player agency. Arbitrary changes just feel frustrating.
And maybe think about when those consequences manifest.
Good point. The article mentioned narrative timing. A sudden change in an NPC's attitude, like deciding to actively help or hinder the party, often has the most impact if it happens at a dramatically appropriate moment tied to ongoing events.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down. To wrap things up, what's the main takeaway here? Why should DMs and players consider using these kinds of advanced NPC loyalty systems?
At the end of the day, it's about adding depth. Real depth and consequence. It makes the relationships you forge or break with the people in the game world feel much more dynamic, more meaningful, and ultimately just way more memorable.
It pushes players to think beyond just killing monsters and grabbing loot, doesn't it? To actually invest in the world and its inhabitants. And that leads to those truly unforgettable stories built on trust, maybe betrayal, shared history, camaraderie.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It really helps make the world feel alive, like it genuinely reacts to what you do. So a huge thank you to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello-Finefellow for the article that sparked this whole discussion. Really great stuff.
Hear, hear.
And of course, we want to hear from you listening. What do you think about NPC loyalty? Have you used systems like this in your games? Got any amazing stories about an NPC who became a crucial ally or maybe a bitter enemy based on your actions? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your experiences.